on that is Grizzly. And we were the last.
I was gonna kind of dig into that a little bit more and a little bit more about what place works with.
You know, use,
I was thinking they're gonna need.
we were kind of forgot us for a while.
Yeah.
Next week's like so clogged.
2011.
I know.
We had,
Like, yeah, it's warm and all, like, it's for Friday from 2 to 4 or something.
I was working out.
2 or something. Just like, are you on both Friday afternoon even? Like,
What happened is that, I don't know if you, Julie wasn't
she was at like. Haven't seen those around. Oh, no. Pushing them. Yeah, what's today? Thursday, so are you worried about the weather or?
We got rain. We have a quorum, you know, so. Bill's here somewhere. He was headed to the restroom, so.
and we found out we had a budget.
Oh, wait a minute.
For
Yeah.
One of those things,
But.
Otherwise, I wouldn't be here.
You have to look at the.
That's what I
Enjoy whatever you're gonna do.
I'll let you
Much this week, but I mean, there's.
or
I don't think Casey's gonna be here, so. If she comes, she can sit in the other chair. Ain't she is gonna be here, but yeah. Is she coming?
July put my.
Yeah, no, they still have class, but Dead Week's just. I forget why they call it that.
We were all trying to speak. This is that was why. I didn't mind.
I don't ever remember it being like.
I did a video.
Teaching. Show my work.
Good morning, welcome to the BCAG board meeting of December 8th. You'll all stand and join me for the pledge of allegiance. I
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll, Victoria.
Board Member Jones?
Here.
Board Member Chuck Reynolds? Board Member Calderon?
Yeah.
Board Member Casey Reynolds? Board Member Knuckles?
Here.
Board Member Teeter?
Here.
Board Member Kimmelshoe?
Here.
Board Member Ritter?
Here.
Board Member Lucero? Board Member Connolly?
Here. Just wanna sit. That's sick. Are you mad at me?
Allergies.
Oh. And then stay down there. Yeah, that's what.
All right, that brings us to the consent agenda. Does anyone wish to remove any items? Seeing none, do we have a motion?
Move approval of the consent agenda. Second.
Those in favor?
Aye.
Item number 5, public hearing to receive testimony on unmet transit.
Good morning, Board. As the Administrator of the Transportation Development Act Funds for Butte County, BCAG is charged with performing an annual unmet transit needs process. The process requires at least one public hearing for the purpose of soliciting comments on unmet transit needs that may exist. We started the 30-day outreach process. That turned out to be a little bit more than 30 days at the October 27th board meeting. And we are here today to open the public hearing. And if there's any official comments that people would like to add into the record, we have received comments over the past 30 days on a range of issues. And that is what we're asking for.
Okay, so we will open the public hearing. I see no public members in attendance. Do you have?
There's a John X on Zoom.
On Zoom. John, would you like to speak at the public hearing?
I would, thank you. This is John Stonebaker from the Upper Ridge Community Council. First, I want to put on the public record that we often hear from Sterling City residents about their total lack of transportation to necessary services in Oroville and Chico. I expect that fixed route service will be completely unreasonable to meet, but something similar to the driver reimbursement proposed for a later item might work for that community. I would also say regarding the minimum standard of living, it had formerly been possible to maintain a minimum standard of living in Magalia as a transit-dependent resident, and that has not been the case since the Camp Fire, because so many services that had been available on the ridge are now trips to the valley, and the service has been curtailed because of the lack of passengers to and from Paradise. That service between Magalia and Chico has been reduced, and service between Paradise and Oroville directly has been eliminated. Communications, transportation connections between Magalia and Oroville are deliberately bad. That's a scheduling issue that might not qualify as an unmet transit need, but in total, the combination of these changes has significantly harmed quality of life for transit-dependent residents of the Upper Ridge. And Beeline's outside consultants may be making things worse rather than better with the elimination of fixed route to the Upper Ridge entirely. I just wanted to put all of that on the public record.
Thank you very much. Are there any other public comments?
May I ask a question of Mr. Stonebreaker?
Sure.
Mr. Stonebreaker, you said that they're deliberately bad. Have you seen some kind of change that, in terms of the schedule? I'm just trying to wrap my head around that particular
Yes,
comment.
so formerly, buses 20 from Oroville to Chico would connect to buses to Paradise, and those buses to Paradise have been eliminated. And the buses from Magalia to Chico to Oroville never connected. So there are always long layovers between buses, and it's essentially a minimum of a 7.5-hour round trip to make a short appointment in Oroville.
During the public hearing.
We'll come back to the board when?
Possibly January, but at this time I'm unsure. After the SS tax, the social service.
So early next calendar year.
Correct.
There are no further public comments? Questions? I'll close the public hearing, and staff will respond to all the comments and bring recommendations back to the board. Item number 6, non-emergency medical transportation program update.
So BCAG completed the NEMT plan in fiscal year 21-22. All the consultants at AMA. This plan investigated the feasibility of providing additional services within the county to non-emergency medical and trips. That was the need for such a service was brought to our attention by the SS task and several other members of the public. In AMA's final assessment, the needs and alternatives report, there were identified 2 potential starting points for NEMT service. The first is expanding our paratransit service to offer intercity connections within Northview and Southview County. And the second was a mileage reimbursement program for volunteer drivers for residents outside the existing Beeline service area. Since the last update presented to the board in June 2022, staff has been working to create a workable model for how these 2 solutions can. We believe a scaled approach to NEMT service is warranted to apply what exactly the needs are, how people would use the service and things like that. We don't want to go full throttle on a service that isn't going to be used or isn't going to be sustainable with grant and federal and state funding. So service would offer 2 quarters of access of care, who are within Beeline paratransit core ADA zone, and who are eligible for dial-a-ride or ADA paratransit, and who have medical appointments outside of their home. This is designed for those people in Magalia who have an appointment in Chico that they wouldn't be able to reach regular paratransit or with the regular fixed route service. It would be more expensive than the regular paratransit because of but it would act as a ride sharing where we would send a bus up to Magalia to pick up the residents who had requested service for that day, all back at the same time into Chico, and then we would pick them all up after their appointment, take them back up the road at one time. So there would be it would be considerably longer than just scheduling a transit trip inside your. But it does allow for people to reach doctors and specialists outside of town. So the idea is that the North Butte would cover Magalia, Paradise, and Chico in both directions, and then South Butte would cover Biggs, Grizzly, Oroville, Thermalito, and Palermo in both directions. Beeline does not currently operate the paratransit in Biggs or Grizzly. We would use city limits as that deciding parameter, who would be where our eligibility zone is. So right now, we are currently investigating the technology that we need for this service, both on the back end and to make it not a pain to users. And we're trying to find funding and sources of funding that will be sustainable in the long term, not sending this for information.
When would you propose to start the pilot?
Ideally, when we were looking at it, it would have been sometime in 2024. At this point, I do not know. Fiscal year 2024. At this point, that's really up in the air. We're having a hard time nailing down some of the technology aspects of it. It's a new sort of thing.
Technology and the funding are really our two main issues. Technology side of it is, can we find an application that on emergency medical transport, AD dial-a-ride, also keep track of how those funds are spent because we'll have to program. So there are some apps out there that can take our existing and it a little bit so that we can deliver the service, also keep track of it. And the other side of it is, so it'll still be roughly subsidized service, cost or a little bit more than what the ADA dial-a-ride service is now, but it will be more available. So I want to make sure that before we put something out there that we've got the ability to fund it and keep track of it and have a pay for it and for us to track the funds and work. So if we, for all intents and purposes, if we could move all that together and come up with those solutions, we'll get it in place in the latter part of 2020.
Any other questions?
I have a question about utilization. How would we get a very accurate picture of what the need is versus what we're providing if we're only serving South County 2 days a week and North County 2 days a week? Like, how would people be able to schedule? I mean, I know when I schedule a doctor appointment, it's like whatever's available in the next 4 months. So how would folks, say on the Ridge, be able to make sure that they got a Monday, Wednesday appointments or?
A program of this nature works pretty successfully down south, and AMA based part of their recommendations, especially the days of the week part on that program in Riverside County. But it would require at the core a lot of communication and back and forth with those doctors' offices to make sure that the client can say, I'm using this service that can get me there between these times on these 2 days. When can I come to the doctor to schedule those visits? But it would require a lot of back and forth with the doctor's offices.
Really, we have a pretty good service, with the FedEx Flyer.
Mhm.
My concern regarding our residents really is for those who have specialized appointments outside the Gridley area. For instance, UC Davis, Enloe, Orville Hospital, even right now.
Mhm.
So, I know that, for instance, Sapla Health provides, transportation for their clients. Can we collaborate, in collaboration with, some, medical institutions, possibility?
For South Butte County, this would connect residents in Gridley and Biggs with the hospitals and services in Oroville. And we are planning on looking at a connection between South and North to connect those people in Oroville with the doctors in Chico and vice versa. But at this time, we're not looking at outside of the county. The mileage reimbursement program would be a trip-by-trip where a client would find their own driver and then they would pay for gas out of pocket, and then they would be reimbursed for the trip later. That could potentially go out of county, but it's something that we're still looking at. That is the second part of that option is that reimbursement.
I understand is the South County, infrastructure to provide only transportation to South County.
That
Medical access points?
that is the first step that we're looking at to implement is going from Biggs and Gridley to Oroville. And then once we have that in place and we can see that that is sustainable at the level that people need, then we can look at Oroville to Chico or Gridley and Biggs to Chico.
Is the mileage, reimbursement program currently running?
No.
There are some agencies that do it, Tehama County does it. That is something that we could move into, want to start with.
Let's say, is that
Yeah.
something that we can start now and, not from now today, but
you know,
now
we-
being sooner than
Yeah, we could,
2023?
we could look at it. There is some element of approving drivers so that people don't get taken advantage of. We need to understand that a little bit better too. What we'd like to put our time into is establishing a service on certain days going in various directions and make sure that we can fund it before we take on the logistics of the reimbursement side of it. So it's kind of, I'll say it's not a parallel effort, but it's pretty close second to getting this one off the ground.
Well, that includes all the agenda items.
There should be an item number 7.
7, is it?
Oh, you're right, I did. Regional Transit B-Line first quarter report. Sorry
Yeah.
about that.
Well, this is the first quarter report for fiscal year 22-23. We do have financial data presented compared to the first quarter results from last year and the annual budget for this year. We also have an operations table that represents performance-based assessments in comparison to the same quarter of the prior fiscal year. So in this case, first quarter 21-22. And then we separate the performance measures based off of mode. So you have urban and rural, fixed route, and paratransit. Fare box ratios for the quarter are presented for reference only, as they're only required to be submitted to the TDA on an annual basis. The comparisons being made in this memo are to the previous fiscal year, which saw dramatic increases in ridership as the world opened back up from COVID. The overall loss of fares continues to cause problems in meeting fare box requirements. In July 2021, however, California AB 149 was passed to extend the previous TDA exemption from fare box requirement through the end of the current fiscal year of 22-23. Federal pandemic relief funding continues to help cover lost fares at this time. Fiscal year 21-22 saw those increases in ridership that I mentioned as the county moved away from the shelter in place. And as we can see in the graph included in it as attachment 3, ridership is continuing to increase significantly over the same time as last year. This first quarter saw a huge shift from July going into August, with almost all of that ridership increase happening in the last 2 weeks of August as students filtered back into Chico and the surrounding areas. The system as a whole, however, is still well below pre-pandemic ridership levels. As a comparison, September 22 saw 57,202 riders served, and in September 19, we had 91,844. Can you scroll all the way down to the end for that attachment? All the way down. One more. And there's our graph. So that top line would be from July 2017 and that to September 2019. And then those bottom 4 are what current service is from July 2020 to September 2022. So if you compare those top 2 lines, you can see that there's still quite a gap between where we were before the pandemic and where we are now, but that gap is getting smaller. So that's a good thing, but it's still very, very low. You can go back. Okay, so paratransit modes are still very low. We're seeing far less fluctuations than the fixed route modes. This is in part because of the nature of paratransit and the people who ride it. COVID-19 saw a huge surge in telehealth appointments and delivery services, which allowed these potential riders to stop taking trips. They wouldn't have to go to the doctor if they could see the doctor on their phone or their computer. Many of these riders simply don't have to take as many trips as they did before because those services changed how they were being offered. And it's unknown what level of additional recovery we can expect to see from those modes. Rural fixed route is our only mode that's currently meeting the TDA requirement of 10% fare box recovery. It came in at 10.26% for the quarter. Ridership for the quarter was up 47.7% from the prior year quarter. Passenger fares were 29% of the annual budget. Expenditures for services and supplies came in at 27% for annual budget. Urban fixed route is not meeting that TDA requirement. It came in at 9.44%. Ridership, however, increased by 22.1% compared to the prior year quarter. Passenger fares were 29% of the annual budgeted expectations, and expenditures are in line with those expectations at 26%. Rural paratransit is not meeting the TDA requirement at 10%. It came in at 7.23%. Ridership was up 2.1% for the quarter, and passenger revenues came in at 25% of budget. So right where we expected, but we don't really know what to expect. Expenditures for service and supplies are below budget. They came in at 19%, and efficiency is holding strong at 3.1 passengers per revenue hour, which is in line with our pre-pandemic standard for paratransit. For urban paratransit, it came in at 8.8% of fare box recovery ratio, so just under the 10%. Ridership was down 5.9% for the quarter, and passenger revenues came in at 24% of budget. Expenditures are currently 22% of budgeted expectations, and the efficiency for this system in the first quarter was 3.3 passengers per revenue hour. There were no preventable accidents in the quarter, with just under 350,000 miles driven, and there were 5 valid complaints, which is within reason for the total number of passengers served, which is just over 150,000. Any questions?
I have a question. I'm just curious. Rural fixed route is meeting its fare box.
Mm-hmm.
And urban fixed route is not, which their fare box ratio is 20%
Yes.
instead of 10. So understandable, it's harder, but they're not even meeting the 10. And that's curious to me because the rural fixed route goes further distances, typically has fewer passengers. So why is urban not coming back as well?
Route 20 saw a lot less of a dip compared to the rest of the system. So our rural system of, route of those inner city trips, even though historically we have very low ridership coming up from Biggs and Gridley, we do have fairly steady ridership that's still maintained on Route 20 between Oroville and Chico. And the Route 40 between Paradise and Chico is still, it's holding relatively strong compared to everything else, which is why it's still able to maintain that, that ratio. I don't really have answers for why we're not even hitting that benchmark for urban routes.
I'm curious, it doesn't logical sense.
Well, there's more hours in the urban as well, too. So, it's a bunch of different numbers to fit into the same pie chart.
That's kind of the statistics of hours served and the revenue collected. Miles are driven by the routes.
Yeah.
Overall, we were pretty consistent between route and air transit service of covering around 100,000 hours of service here. We are around 85. So our total hours that we serve are back a little bit, but we're seeing that we're really finding a number that is going to be our number going forward, quite a bit lower than fire and COVID together. Just doubled up.
Any other questions?
Sorry, can you scroll back to the graph?
Yep.
Quick question. Trying to understand the graph. So the top line, was that the peak ridership that we've ever had?
No.
When was the peak ridership that we've ever had? What year would that have been, or years?
2015.
Why do you think it's come down from 2015? I mean, obviously, the pandemic had a lot to do with where we are now, but.
We were decreasing even before the pandemic and even before the Camp Fire, and that was a national trend in the decrease of public transit ridership. So we were seeing decreases, not like very sharp ones, but we were seeing trends where things were just 2% or 5% lower than where they were the previous year. But so what you're seeing here is like before the Camp Fire is a normal fluctuation pattern that takes into account the school months at those very, very low valleys, and October, November, kind of these higher peaks, these September, October peaks. And then you have the smaller peak happening in February and March. But honestly, people had just started moving away as gas became cheaper and as cars became more affordable. People started moving away from public transit in general. And we were seeing that every month where numbers were just going down. And then all of this happened, and it was like a switch. Beeline is not abnormally affected by this in a large way. A lot of other agencies are still suffering with this same sort of trend where things are coming back, but are they coming back fast enough? Possibly not.
And then we're planning to do a regional travel survey after January to look at pandemic. Are they working? Or so, we don't know how much here, but certainly like in Sacramento and places like that, agencies, state agencies, and so we need to get a better handle on.
I think all those things come into play. I would think with the raise in fuel prices, that this thing I would think would continue to go up, although they're starting to come back down again now. But then one other thing on what is the bottom line there, the yellow line, participant total?
It says paratransit total.
I'm sorry, paratransit, okay, forget it.
I tried to make that as big as I could, but no, that one is the paratransit, so you can see that.
Explain to me what paratransit is, I should know that.
That is the door-to-door service. It's considered complementary to the fixed route in that it serves the same area that the fixed route does.
Serve mostly handicapped type folks, or no?
We have two different types of paratransit service. We have ADA paratransit service for those with a medical disability that is documented, and then we have dial-a-ride for those residents in Butte County who are 70 and older. So all of that ridership is captured there in that line.
Legally, we're only required to do the ADA service because we have capacity. We provide dial-a-ride service, and then in addition to that, we've even extended zones in those urban areas, so it goes beyond. We're only required to, under ADA, do 3/4 of a mile from fixed routes. Our zones go out to what, 3 miles?
3 3/4 miles. We have 3 supplemental zones after that.
What Angel was mentioning, the paratransit is all over the county, goes to South County as well?
We have, Beeline operates paratransit in Chico, Paradise, Magalia, and Oroville. The Gridley paratransit is operated by the city of Gridley.
Outside the city limits of Gridley?
I know nothing.
Like they were talking about.
I don't believe so,
Okay.
but I don't know.
Is there any,
Yeah, the Feather Flyer usually provides transportation for those who don't have any transportation to the medical appointments. For those clients or residents who live outside the city limits, it's really difficult to access services. They don't have any transportation. I know that Ampla Health has its own transportation, so their patients can access their transportation services. Whereas other clinics in the area don't have that service.
It's the paratransit only has to operate city to city through fixed route. That's what makes it hard. So you can't go from city to city. Hence, the non-emergency medical transport option, and us looking at that, is intended to try to provide that link from us. So, it's not a perfect.
what I understand, and if they were to go down to South County, I'm sure it'd be a financial loser. I mean, the whole thing's kind of a financial loser, and that's why we're subsidized to do these things. I understand that, but it would be nice if Biggs Gridley area had some kind of service like that. Don't know that that's something we could do, but.
The Gridley area does, and we, with the route study that we're doing for the routing optimization, we have asked them to look at service in Biggs and Gridley and whether it makes sense to add that into Beeline, but we haven't heard anything back about that.
We don't want to duplicate or eliminate what the service is now providing too. So, we want to try to, as best we can, complement that service and provide as much service as we feasibly can afford, subsidize and fund, everyone in Butte County.
The analysis they have done though is that the system.
However, I do believe that, knowing, and I'm thinking about one particular individual it could be that, doesn't have any transportation, can't drive, and he needs to secure rides from church members to keep his appointments in Oroville. This is an issue that I'm pretty sure there's others in Greeley with a similar situation. It would be great if we do bring this service to those people who need medical appointments or have medical appointments outside the city limits of Greeley.
And that is a population of people that we are trying to capture.
So the Feather Flyer does provide transportation to appointments, not only appointments, but to the store, and mainly utilized by our elderly.
Any other questions?
Thank you.
Item number 8, This is the opportunity for members of the public to, speak on items not on the agenda. Did we have anybody? You have something?
Mr. Jones, yeah, I do have, today, well, we're losing a couple board members we know of this month, at least it's been, board member Jones and Lucero, and we just want board member Jones today, she's here, board member. We have a plaque that we wanted to present to board member Jones, and go ahead and just read what it says to everybody, and then appreciation for your service on Butte County Association of Governments. Paradise Council Member Jody Jones, who served on the BCAG Board of Directors for 8 years, during which time she distinguished herself in supporting regional transportation planning by working to resolve regional transportation issues, in the development of the Paradise Transit Center, recovery efforts for the town of Paradise, supporting the enhancement of Butte Regional Transit, and supporting the improvements to the Route 70 corridor. Butte County Association of Governments Board of Directors commends Paradise Councilmember Jones for her years of service and accomplishments, and expresses its appreciation for her service to the town of Paradise and the County Association of Governments. Recognizes the many contributions she has made to improving transportation. Very welcome.
I've had the good pleasure of working with Jody for many years, because prior to being on our board for 8 years, she was with Caltrans for 34. So, and as prior district director for Caltrans District 10, we've worked with her for years, and she's been very, very helpful to getting all of the transportation projects within our region out there. And so, again, we thank her very much for all her work.
Thank you very much. It's been my honor to serve on this board and to serve with all of you. Wish you all the best of luck in the future. I'm gonna enjoy my retirement.
I just wanted to chime in real quickly, and that is, after the campfire, I can't imagine went through as being mayor at that point in time, along with Supervisor Teeter, to work with all the myriad of agencies and issues that you did, so thank you. Obviously, that has never been duplicated, or hope would never duplicate it in the state of California.
And hope it never is.
Right, and so I can't imagine what you guys went through. So, thanks to both of you for.
And we did have a plaque.
Oh,
I was just gonna say, we did have a plaque for Supervisor Lucero, and we'll make sure that we get that too.
And one more quick thing, under public comment. You know, I attend different events here and there, and I just want to thank Chris and Yvonne. They were down, they did attend a lot of events, and they even had an event, a booth at, help me with this, on Dia de los Muertos. Did I say that right? Okay, Day of the Dead, had a great celebration, and helps put that together, so thank you. And you guys were there with your booth. I think after my wife and I met, there was a huge storm that came through, and I practically blew you guys away, I'm sure. So, but I see them at different events here and there, and so thanks to the BCAG board. And I know it's no fun sitting in a booth for 3 or 4 hours, but thank you for doing it.
We enjoy it. Thanks, Todd.
I saw them, talking to people and students. They will have.
Yeah, we had some good conversation.
Hi, this is Yvonne. Can you hear me okay?
yes, hi, Yvonne.
Hi, Jody. I just wanted to say thank you so much for everything you have done as Caltrans District Director and for BCAG. You know, I've known Jody since 1988 when I was an intern at Caltrans prior to BCAG. So just thank you. You've been such a big help over all of the years. Last thing is I'm just happy to report the California Transportation Commission approved 4 active transportation projects in the region, 3 of which are in Paradise, 1 in South Oroville for Butte County for $48 million. So going out with a bang. So thank you.
Thank you, Yvonne, for all the work you've done getting money for all the projects in Butte County. We appreciate it.
The money grabber.
Yeah. And with that, we will adjourn this meeting. The next meeting of the BCAG Board of Directors is Thursday, January 26th, here in the boardroom.